Stardate 12021901. Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a podcast that talks about Star Trek. I forgot to pull up anything we normally say here
loose
tonight.
Hang. Loose hang, I believe.
Loose hang
Yeah.
from the hip.
Mike is on an away mission, so I'm taking a stab at hosting without prepared notes. So it's going to be a fun time, y'all. But yeah, we're a kind of smart, kind of funny podcast that talks about new and old Trek. I think that's what we usually say.
He's got some sort of tagline
At some
for
point,
us.
yeah.
Something like that. My name is Mariah Gossett. With me on screen, we have
Clyde Haynes
and Grant.
All right, y'all. We are tonight talking about a show, Star Trek Discovery, Choose to Live. Wow, y'all.
Some show.
I
am the notes?
No, I have it. I have notes. I have my notes.
It's
up.
called Choose to Live. It's the third episode of
Live.
season 4.
Yes, season 4, episode 3, written by Terry Hughes Burton and directed by Christopher J. Byrne. It's going to be a fun ride tonight, y'all. I got my COVID vaccine booster. Get your booster if you can. So I'm a little sleepy.
Mine.
I don't believe in the vaccine. I just don't.
Kick him out. Get him out of this podcast. There you go.
All right, just you and me, Clyde. We're just going to keep it here for science.
That's what we have to do. That is what we have to do.
I guess we'll let him back in to talk.
Hello. I'm now a believer.
Oh, good. That was all it took.
Yep, that's all I needed. A little kick in the pants.
That is all it took. But yes, tonight we're going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery season 4, episode 3. There's a ton that happened in this episode. I definitely want to jump right in. But Clyde, can you first tell people how they can tell us some of their thoughts about this particular episode?
If you're watching us live and you want to participate, then there's a couple things that you can do. You got some thoughts, you got some questions, and type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital pod in the chat, and we will see your comment. And you'll notice that if you have a hot freak, something you want to share about the show, a hot freak, then type a capital H, capital F, capital HF in the chat, and we'll mention your hot freak possibly at some point. Maybe.
Yeah.
Next week.
I appreciate the maybe, because if we don't, we're off the hook.
Have you if you've ever podcasted and you say something like that and you don't get to someone's comment after saying that you would,
you would hear the wrath.
Yeah, so it's you gotta hedge your bet a little bit with a maybe. But we try.
Worse.
We try really hard.
We do try. We do not want to have the wrath of Khan upon us. We would like to feature your hot freak if we can get to it.
The wrath of Phil.
The wrath of Phil.
The wrath of Phil.
I think Phil can forgive us for anything.
It's not as like intimidating
menacing?
as the wrath of Khan. Right?
Maybe vowel. That's the problem.
Maybe the wrath of Marg.
Ooh.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, since we are a Star Trek podcast, as Clyde was saying, we don't do hot takes. We do some hot freaks.
Oh shit.
Hot freaks. Hot freaks.
Somebody's gonna get texted by Mike any minute now. What are you doing?
What are you doing to my show? Who wants to go first with their hot freak about this particular episode?
Clyde does.
Sure. I did really like this episode. I think this episode was a little bit different, but I felt like it had some really great notes in terms of you had some kind of cool battle scenes, right? Like you had some great fight coordination. You had some off-world kind of antics, but you also had these incredible, like, touching moments of whether it's really, I don't want to say just tender, but emotionally complex, whether it was Adira and Gray, Book and going through his emotions, and even Burnham. I did think that for all of those, if this was a show that was an hour and a half, we might have gotten a little bit more depth. Like, I think with Book, like I if I was brand new to the show, I don't know that I would have felt it as much as I did, because it kind of felt like it moved a little fast. It was like, hey, I'm going to mind meld with you. And then great. Like, all is right with the world. And then Burnham, I think, because I know the character, I can understand the confliction with the from a justice standpoint. But all in all, I really enjoyed it. It's so interesting to me. I think the two things that really blew my mind from where I was to where I am is how important Saru is to this crew. I love Saru in this role, right? Like I mean, man, you talk about a person who glues it all together. So I love that. And Vance, right? Like I was watching him and going, man, it was not that long ago where we were chanting Vance is sus. And now I'm looking at him, and that orchestra analogy was just, I dug it. I'm an analogy guy, and I love that one. I was like, man, that's a great analogy. And I'm looking at the president and thinking, quite possibly this might be the road to the Federation being the Federation that we're used to, right? The making the big decisions, but really thinking about wisdom. I was all for this episode. I thought it was great.
Mariah, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, Clyde. I really enjoyed this episode. I think I said it last week. Like, I feel like we now know our characters. We're in this world that we're going to be living in. We get to fully experience it now. And I love that we're getting more character development, right? Like, it's not just about what are we doing to solve the big problem. It's what are we doing to solve the big problem? But at the same time, we're really learning more and more about these characters that we've kind of grown to love and our new characters that have come in as well. I think David Ajala is like so incredible to watch on screen, and like I got like teary-eyed at multiple points in this episode. We also finally got to see the bar. I love when we finally get the bar on the ship. You know, we didn't see the bridge, I think, even once this episode. We got to see different parts of the ship. We got to have all of these really great one-on-one moments. You know, and I don't know if it is something I had to consider because of COVID protocols and like really reducing how many people are in a particular scene. But if that's the reason, I mean, they really made it work in such a wonderful way, because I think some of these smaller 2 to 3 people in a scene sections of this episode in particular were really beautiful and really well acted. But yeah, I mean, 10 out of 10. We got to go off world in multiple worlds. We got to go. I mean, it was great.
Alien,
I just like
new
alien.
species.
We had the Abronians who we got to meet for the first time, which was really cool.
Are they
and
really called the Abronians?
Yeah.
Oh no. I didn't know that.
Abronians. It might be the Abronians.
Okay.
Abronians. The Abronians. Which were real. I like when we get past humanoid structures in some of the aliens that we get to encounter. So that was really cool. Yeah, I think it was just like a fully knocked out of the park episode for me. I'm glad we're moving forward with what this kind of big thing that's happening in the universe, but at the same time, taking the time to have these moments of full character development and realization there.
I think I was kind of mixed on this episode. I definitely agree with what you're saying, Mariah, about the intimate moments and there being a lot of heart to this episode. That said, me being kind of bitchy, I'll say that these sweeter, more saccharine moments, I like it here or there, but when like it's hitting like on multiple threads, I'm like, no, I do want more of the action sequence. I want more of the
you got
world
fighting
building
murder
storyline.
nuns.
I know, I got fighting murder nuns, but I don't know. I thought that those scenes were just kind of weird. I mean, we'll get into it a little bit more when we talk about that whole plot point. Ultimately, I thought that a lot of stuff actually did happen in this episode, and I know that like around the 45-minute mark, it felt like it wrapped up, and then I went, oh, we still have another 15 minutes of this episode after everything that happened with Burnham. I think that there's still some positive energy going on with how they're partnering up different characters with each other to see how they play off of each other. And there was some really important things being shown in this episode and being expressed that I haven't seen in other TV shows, really, especially mainstream shows. So in those regards, I thought it was good, and it's important and very valuable, what this show does, and I appreciate that. That is my overall hot freak. We do have some from the listeners.
Yeah, why don't we jump in and take
or
a look at those?
some
Grant, while you
viewers.
pull one up, I would just like to remind folks that you can find all the links to the audio and video version of our podcast at StarTrekPod.co. And if you enjoy our content, you can go to patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Boom.
And
I can overrule that comment for that.
for that moment. But after commercial break over.
James
some hot
Worm
freaks.
says Kawat Milat is sus. What do you guys think? That's something I definitely want to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. Let's jump into the Kawat Milat discussion. It is interesting that I think, have a context for them that is so far back in time at this point from what we've seen in Picard. And then you think about what they are in this particular context now that Navarre is unified, right? And I wonder what has and has not changed for that group in that amount of time.
I think to me, that's a hard question. Are they sus? Right. And the reason why I say it's a hard question is because we've got Burnham's mom as a Kawat Milat, right? But we are also aware that she hasn't, it's not like she's been there the entire time, right? She is from the past, future, all over. So it's one of those things where if they are sus, how involved is she? How sus is she? And is she so, like, will that become a tension between her and her daughter? And which is interesting because if they are sus, Burnham right now is playing the uber righteous character right now, right? Like, she is, if you think about everything we've seen so far, she is saying everyone must live. I can't sacrifice anyone. My job is to save everyone. And now she's like, justice. Who cares about the greater picture? But justice for the individual. So it's just kind of interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's also interesting to me for Burnham to take that kind of opinion when her first season was her essentially coming out of prison.
Right.
Well, yeah, and like the pilot, because for some reason when this episode went off, CBS was ready to play the pilot episode, trying to take over my whole day. But when I saw that come up, I literally, because I just saw the Burnham scene, it transported me back to think, you mutinied your captain for the greater good, right? Like you basically tried to knock your captain out and then give a Vulcan hello, and now you're going, no. Who cares about the greater good? It's about this one situation.
She's grown. That's what the seasons have been about, right?
But is that, I don't know if that's like growth, like her view of justice, I think has become interestingly skewed now that she's in charge, to me, where it was like you were saying, Clyde, like she wants to keep everyone alive and has this like sense that the Federation knows what's best when it comes to serving justice in some way, shape, or form. But it's interesting to me that she wouldn't just see this as like, oh, by the end of it, I understood the ends almost justified the means. But even then, I kind of question this particular Kawat Milat's like tactic. Like, she didn't want to give away their location because they were helpless and they were full of this like very particular, they're full of latinum, right? Like their bodies carried latinum and didn't want any harm to come of them. But it just seems like, well, then couldn't you have talked to people who wouldn't harm this group and get them like up and running again?
Your entire Qowat Milat, or
Yeah.
or yeah, any like the fact that it felt like a plot contrivance that they wanted to introduce this character as a viable threat, but then have it both ways of, oh, but the end was a justifiable cause. And it doesn't really justify going in and killing that dude's family.
Yeah.
Similarly, I feel like there's a contrivance of having Burnham be the person who has to go, but what about justice for the family versus the greater good of the Federation, just so that they could have a means of having that conversation about how they need to navigate those gray areas of ethical decisions in what it takes to bring about a bigger tent, I guess, so to speak. More people being represented within the Federation.
Yeah.
I think that was the part that I struggled with is kind of in the beginning of the episode. She didn't need to kill him, right? Like, to be honest with you, she was kicking his butt all over that room.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, every time he came for her, effortlessly, like she wasn't even breaking a sweat in doing it. And so when he tried to grab her, she had him. There wasn't a true reason to stab him. Right? Like, I think that's the thing that I struggle with is you're like, well, I didn't want to. Well, if you didn't want to, you didn't have to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah, I think then, I mean, almost in a roundabout way, now that we've kind of discussed it all the way through, it's like, then I do think Burnham has a point of like, while she was like, I see this greater good in this mission, this particular person probably didn't need to do the particular act, like those specific actions in order to get her goal. Right.
Right.
So yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. I could see how sitting in a writer's room, you would talk this in circles and then kind of come to the conclusion that the show had to put up there.
Let's present both aspects, and there was a discussion, and that's kind of the best you can do at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's true. Do we have any other hot freaks from the chat?
We do. Takako says, I am really liking the making of a captain that we're seeing this season. We've always seen captains already made. We now get to see how those captains are made.
Yeah, I would agree. It's I think she is doing a great job of surrounding herself with the people that she needs and putting them in the right places.
The other thing that I think we're seeing around this making of a captain idea is there's this, I don't know, there's a narrative that I believe is true, that it is so much easier to be number one than it is to be the captain, right? Because I think when we've seen Burnham as number one, we've seen Saru as number one, like they just thrive. All of a sudden they've got all this wisdom, right? They're there with the quick-witted thing and hey, you should bring Ensign, you should bring Tilly along on this thing. Like they've got all the answers. But when you're in that big chair, all of a sudden it's like, I'm not quite sure.
It also seems to be such a Trek thing that if you're in the captain's chair, you have to be in all the action now. You don't delegate that to other people. No, Burnham's got to go every time because she's the star of the show. So, in that regard, I guess it makes sense, but it also does not make sense for a ship to always send the captain.
Yeah, although I'm liking that we're getting these different kind of pairings of characters this season. I really enjoyed the scene between Culber and Saru. I thought that in the like little lounge area was really nice. Although it seemed like Culber essentially had the same conversation with Adira that he then had with Saru about like making connections and like being this person on the ship that has to have this sort of wisdom and leadership. And I felt like it was an interesting parallel to see someone who's like of older and more experience telling that to a younger person, and then two people who I think see themselves as peers kind of having that same conversation about what's needed in order to connect with people on that level.
Right.
And Also, we get a dartboard, and we all know that all the best TV shows and movies have dartboards in them.
and poker tables apparently. Gotta have
Yeah.
both.
I mean, I would definitely want to add like that dartboard to like my Star Trek shed, like my only Star Trek place where you could just go hang out, like and toss darts. That'd be what's up.
Yeah,
And
that was
invite
really
us
cool.
over.
I mean, I would. We could have a good time.
It's
Like
not much of a drive to LA.
I don't want to call it like a man cave because that just feels wrong. So it's a Star Trek shed.
Yeah. Trek shed.
I like a Trek
Trek
shed.
shed. Trek shed. That's what's up.
Chupi
That's a fun
says,
time.
what an emotional ep in a beautiful way. Each moment took me personally by surprise how much they hit me. And shout out to the Fab Lounge.
Yeah, that was a cool set. I'm really enjoying that
Yep.
piece, and I hope we get to see some cool stuff kind of going on there. And I think for me, one of the most emotional pairings this episode was Book and Stamets going to the Navarre Science Academy, which looked incredible.
I literally stopped and was just like, what?
That was a cool
That-
little set.
The visuals on that was amazing.
They're really using that AR like screen setup for some I'm so excited that they have that now in order to be able to do so many more off-world sets for like way less cost, which I think means we're going to get to go to way cooler places this entire season.
Although,
I
you
mean,
know,
I
the
think
science
that's what we
experts
want.
there. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You got it, Grant.
Yeah, the science experts there, the Navarre people, very disappointing overall that they're just like, yeah, we're gonna meditate for a while and
Hey,
then we'll
man.
get back to you. I'm like,
Don't sleep on napping, man.
I
Like,
just love
for real.
Stamets being like, no, we got to workshop this, man. I work off of that kind of caffeine energy, and I need you guys working with me here.
You know what I really appreciated though with Stamets and the emotion that I felt with like you could almost hear his brain going, it's gotta be tachyons. It's gotta be tachyons. Like if it's not, what am I don't know. Like that type of emotion, I really was like, I felt it. Like he was really hoping like this has to be it because we have to know what happens if we don't. And I was really kind of on the edge of my seat a little bit thinking, are they going to give it to us? And simultaneously wanting us to have this resolved, right? As like, because I'm feeling the emotion of the characters, but also going, don't give it to us. Like, don't make it that easy, right? Don't wrap everything up in this one episode.
The past couple seasons seem to like have really transformed what this show is doing as far as its consideration for people's psychological well-being, and how other characters notice and are aware of that and are considerate of how they approach and talk to them. You know, seeing Stamets talking to Book in particular when he's dancing around why he doesn't want to invite him to the science thing, and eventually he has to just kind of be like, look, I'm going to be straightforward then with you. I have to talk very directly in scientific terms about something that was traumatic to you, and that's kind of why I want you to be aware. And I appreciate when you see a show that's like, okay, this is how this character is going to be feeling. They're going to be hurt and raw, and the other people around them are aware of that, and they are going to be doing their best to try and navigate around all of that pain and hurt. And it felt like in the first season, maybe in the first season and a half, it was a lot of characters with a lot of damage, all isolated, and none of them were really talking about it, and they're all hiding it. And now everyone's aware and they're reaching out to each other because they're what each other has now, I guess, in the future.
Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mariah.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought the moment between Book and the Navarre president were some of my favorite kind of more emotional scenes of the entire episode, because I thought it was such a, I mean, those two particular species, right? Like Book's planet and him are total empaths. Like that's their entirety, is emotion and connecting in that way. And then you have the Navarre president, who is Vulcan, and she is just like so ingrained in logic. But there's that beautiful moment when he's like, oh, you understand emotion. And she's just like, well, yeah, I just choose not to like act upon it because I think it's easier to not do it. But then she's like, but for you, that would be like not breathing. And I thought that was such a wonderful way to express that, like, while there's always two tactics to solve a problem, you have to do it with the way that's the best for you.
Yeah.
And then, you know, just like full on crying when Book gets to see his little nephew turn around and like they yell at each other that they, you know, it was very well done. Very well done. I thought.
I have a question here from James Worm, who says, I feel the absence of tachyons is extra interesting. Aren't stray tachyons in all scans like other background radiation?
I do think there's something going on here, because here's what I picked up on. There's this moment where something clearly kind of comes out, right, of this gravitational anomaly. She says, I've seen what I need to see. And then it's like, so was it there? Nope, nothing's there. Something was there. And I was almost like, Stamets, you asked the wrong question. You asked, was there tachyons? You really need to ask, what did you see? And do you have any thoughts? Like, I do feel like there's something not being said there.
I don't know what tachyons are, so this is just way over my head in this episode.
I believe it is a type of radiation.
Okay. I guess it shows up as green in the sky.
Blue.
That's
blue.
At least in this, yeah.
At least in this. I mean, I know tachyon nets to prevent like cloaking ships or to spot cloaking ships, but I'm not a tachyon expert.
I'm not. Wait.
It is a particle of a hypothetical particle that travels faster than the speed of light.
Okay. When after James mentioned
above
this,
my pay grade of science knowledge.
After James mentioned this, I'm trying to follow a little bit what's going on in the chat. Home Chicky said, it took me a minute to get what you're asking, but yes, the video was faked. Is that in reference to what was being seen by what's the name Book? Do you think that there's like a false memory implanted in there, like where he didn't see what maybe he did see? Can they do that?
No, I don't think.
Don't know.
Okay, then that could just be something else completely. I thought I'd ask you guys more of like,
different convo is what James just said.
Yes.
Can the Navarre make people see?
No.
What they?
No, you can only see what you actually remembered.
Okay.
They can't like implant memories into your brain. They can share their memories with you, but it's always just based on an actual.
Apparently,
memory.
They were talking about a Spock video in season 2. So I'm way off base. I apologize for taking us down a weird tangent.
But yeah, so I did try to do some general Googling on like the different kinds of black holes that they were talking about and like the dark matter anomalies. And of course, all of it is like theoretical stuff, but the closest thing that I could find to like an explanation of what they thought it was throughout this episode is essentially the same kind of reaction that happened at the Big Bang, so the creation of the universe. And that's when you got like the kind of creation of tachyons and like all of this kind of stuff happening. So yeah, that's all I have as far as science knowledge to share on that particular topic.
I've got a question for you all around Stamets. Are you disappointed that we're not getting more angry Stamets in regards to Burnham? I feel like at the end of the last season, it was like, and it's like, and then this season was like, too soon?
What was
it was jokey.
Yeah, what was it that Burnham did exactly? I don't fully
threw him out an airlock.
Yep.
Because he wanted to say
he wanted to jump the ship, but she was like, you can't do that because your family is involved. So I'm gonna make Book jump the ship.
Right. And the issue was we can't have both, the only two people who can jump the ship
on the
same ship at the same time. And that's why in this the pilot episode, he made the joke, what about that? And she said, like, too soon? And they said, no, you'll be basically a hologram, a holo.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they're dancing around it because we haven't got a lot of scenes of Stamets and Burnham interacting. Maybe there is underlying hostility there. It's just those aren't the scenes of the stories that we've gotten in these first 3 episodes.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get something because I really felt like that was such a like harsh conflict at the end, and there was such disappointment and anger there that it feels so disingenuous just to leave it as if even after 5 months that it's 5 months we didn't see, granted, but like give us something. Can we get a flashback? Can we get like a them like
Nicole says no.
in like
He and Michael are family, so it's not gonna stay mad forever. Let it go. He watched Frozen. Let it go.
Him and Culber read a lot of books on trauma and decided to just let it all go.
Culber's constantly being like, dude, just move on. Get over it.
Only the way he says it seems definitely more like Disney Pixar owl-esh, right? Like sometimes you just have to let the things go so that you can heal, right? Like when Culber says it's
right,
way more,
I mean, honestly, he could just read the dictionary to me and I would be like, great, thank you so much. Very relaxing.
So there's emotional moments going on with Adira and Gray. Gray has now gotten his body. He's very excited about that. And we do see a lot of what we were discussing last week about Adira feeling this loss, that they no longer have that connection with Gray at all times. But being able to let go in that way is allowing space for Gray to have this beautiful transformation into being corporeal.
Have a body.
Yeah. I love the moment where Adira is saying, I should have never let him do this. And Cobra goes, it wasn't your choice.
Yeah.
Right.
And I see Adira growing up, and I think they are gonna, I think by the end of this season, they are really gonna mature. And it's exciting to see, because I thought that was a big moment, right? This idea of, even though you've held them close to you for so long, this is going to be a big change. Not all of it is going to be great. And we all have people that we care about, that we want to protect, and we would shelter, probably too much. And I think this was a situation where what we see is that what Gray wanted was a chance, even if it cost him everything. And I think that was a little bit challenging for Adira, but I think we saw growth through it at the end. At least I hope so.
A question I had for you both is, what's the name of the alien species that Gray is? Like Tal Shiar, is that right?
Trill.
What's just like, what?
I don't know that. Did I just say an X-Men thing?
Tal Shiar are the
Romulans from that show Picard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, from other shows, but we see them last on Picard.
So Gray is a Trill. What function will Gray have?
A Trill too.
Huh?
Not that.
Wait. Oh, sorry. What function do you think Gray will have on the ship?
What?
Now?
Sorry.
And like, how will the interactions be working with Gray, kind of joining the team, and where does Gray fit in, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, I think, a big theme to explore, especially for Adira to have to deal with, because now there is the possibility that Gray could leave the ship to go back to the Trill homeworld to train to be a guardian, because I don't know if that is training that Gray can do aboard Discovery, or what Gray's sort of full, potential on the ship would be.
But do you think they'd bring Gray back only to send him away from the ship and the show?
No, but I do think we're going to have that conversation on the show.
Okay,
yeah, I think that conflict is going to be explored. I wouldn't think, I think it would be a waste of Ian Alexander to have him be there in full body form and then be like, just kidding, I'm going to go to the Trill homeworld. And the other thing is that Adira is still is still the host of Tal. And so I think this then would perhaps be that Gray is now the guardian of that, of Tal, essentially, as the Trill.
I know that Clyde loves watching This Is Us and these shows that are a little bit more focused on like interpersonal drama and relationships and all that. But I'm hoping that we'll get to see more of Gray just getting to be part of the science and action on the ship and getting to like do stuff with the rest of the team as well, instead of it being a little bit more of the soap opera side now. Now that he's in there and he's real and he's part of the team.
I think you want a little bit of both. I think the best Trek, it gives us this emotional connection. It's character driven. We see some of this tension. You know, we like the love interests that happen and the romance that happens on the ship and kind of that dynamic. But also you want the tech, you want the exploration, a little bit of the politics. And the thing that I think we get more of in Discovery than we've gotten in any other Trek in a long time is the action, right? And so I think it's you've got to think about how you balance that carefully. And I think they're doing a good job. But yeah, so I don't want it to be saccharine. And yes, well, I like This Is Us. That's not what I want here.
Don't lie.
I don't. You know, I like that. First of all, This Is Us. There's way too much emotion to mix in with Trek. Like I don't need that type of. I don't need that. Not week to week. But I think what we get with Gray and Adira in particular is something that we haven't really seen before. I'm trying to think back, and that's young love that is completely clueless about what love really means, right? They get the emotion and the passion, but all the complications that come with it. I can't remember the last time in Trek we really got that, right? And they're going to have to deal with our relationship is different now that you're separate from my head. Gray is going to have his own desires and career, perhaps, and that might not align directly with what's going on with Adira. Not to mention the thing about Trek, and the reason why relationships are always very, very dicey on Trek, is that at any point in time, one of you may be in a life-threatening situation, and the other person has to revolve around that. And sometimes, as Burnham is dealing with, that means preparing to lose you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting now that we have sort of three pretty established couples on the ship, right? Like we have Burnham and Book, we have Culber and Stamets, and now we have Adira and Gray. And it's going to be, I think, very interesting to see how that dynamic works, because I feel like that's the most couples we've ever had on a ship before.
And usually like we have somebody who's like, you know, a dating, like
on the ship,
serial dater, right? Like if it's, I mean, it could be Kirk, it could be Riker, I mean, it could be Tom Paris, or you know, Harry Kim, I guess, depending on some of those episodes, and then everyone from that show I don't really talk about, Enterprise, because that was just like whatever. We don't really have anybody who's dating and single, I think, on this show.
Yeah, who's the Lothario of this show?
It's gonna be Bryce.
I mean,
no.
Saru is out there.
Right, Bryce or Reese, I feel like could really bachelor life it up on this show.
I don't know. I mean, if Mike was here, he'd make a play for Detmer. I mean,
but we all know Owosekun and Detmer are soulmates.
They're shipped in our hearts.
They are shipped in our hearts. And I don't want to break that. I guess
Tilly.
they could.
What's wrong with Tilly?
I think Tilly. So I was going to just say Tilly's on this big soul searching mission this episode, and has, I think, one of almost a better one-on-one scene with Burnham's mom than Burnham does, like about like life and like pathways and sort of like dealing there. But it could also just be that Tilly's in this space where she's really trying to like gather information from a lot of different people to figure out what her next path should be.
Tilly's also a leech off of other people's moms because she doesn't have that relationship with her own mom.
Yeah, that's true.
So she'll just kind of be like, I'm gonna get all the advice from you, because clearly your relationship with Michael is fantastic. Also seems very damaged.
I was just like, dang girl, that had to have been really bad mac and cheese to spit it out. Cause I usually can get down on just about any kind of macaroni and cheese. And I was like, what did that replicator do to you?
Yeah, I had no idea what was going on. I was like, who?
I
Like
think-
everybody I know can. You can go, yeah, this mac and cheese is not. That ain't Mama's mac and cheese. Like I
no,
can
I think the
understand.
idea is
but
that
to
she was
spit
trying
it out
something
was
new, right?
Oh,
'Cause
she maybe
doesn't
it.
eat mac and cheese at all.
Oh,
And so this is her first time giving that a shot because when she was listing off all the different new things she was trying. So I think that was what part of it was, is she never eats that stuff. And then she gave it a shot and was like, oh.
disliking cheese is a human disorder. It was a funny line. Home
Yeah.
chicky. But yeah, I liked that she got to have these sort of moments with Burnham and then also with Saru about just like trying to essentially be really open and honest about the fact that she's feeling down. And I feel like this is one of the first times, instead of it being, like Detmer's PTSD over trying to fly, we actually get to see someone who's trying to like actively move themselves through depression, right? And like trying to figure out what to do as next steps. And I thought it was interesting. I watched the Ready Room for this week, and they talked a lot about how, there are definite parallels to the season to what was going on with COVID. They're like, we didn't want to write a COVID season because no one wants to watch that. They're like, but it was on everybody's minds. And, they're showing like all of the behind the scene footage of everyone having to be masked up and like interacting over screens with different like cast and crew members. And like, even on the Ready Room, Blue DeBario and Ian Alexander were talking about how, because they don't live in Toronto, like them and Wilson Cruz were in these like hotel rooms that they essentially had to be like alone in all the time if they're not on set, and how isolating that was. And so it's interesting to see, I think, some of those themes weaving in where Tilly is perhaps feeling isolated because she's in a different time, in a different place, and having to figure out what her place is in this kind of new reality, right? And I think a lot of us can relate to that.
This show is a bit of an anomaly as far as other Trek shows, right? Are they all this introspective and like a deep examination of the human condition like this one's doing this season?
I mean, yes.
Oh, are
That's
they?
the
Okay.
point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it's a space adventure show week to week with hard science and aliens.
So it's definitely not a space western.
It's not Serenity. Okay.
It's
No.
no. And even Serenity had some moments.
Yeah.
No, this is different. This is let's oddly enough, there's just enough space opera to not annoy people, but a lot of the action is talking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? To me, it's closer to a diplomatic political show than it is a Western.
Yeah, more West Wing than Western.
Yep.
If you will. Yeah. What did y'all think of the interactions between Burnham, the president, and our admiral?
I love Vance.
You've come around
from Vance is sus.
Yeah. Do I still have the banner for you saying Vance is sus every single week? I don't think I did, but that was constantly your refrain, and now you're like, I love him. He's the best.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's like he's just got this like it's like part grandfatherly kind of like quality where he's just dispensing some wisdom, and then part like
he's very pragmatic.
Like a barber in a barber shop. Like, I'm just gonna sit back and let this all unfold. And when you look all confused, I'm gonna drop some nuggets of wisdom on you, and then like exit stage left. Like that's really what it is. And it's almost sad, but it's like you're not expecting a whole lot. He's just sitting in the corner and you go, man, I don't understand. Well, young blood, this is what's happening. And then it's like, oh, okay. And then he out. Like it's kind of nice. I like it.
It does seem. So was the president always the president, and we just didn't see her last season? Is that what was going on?
No, she's the newly elected president of the Federation.
And the president's over top of Admiral Vance then.
Correct.
Yep.
So
the
she's
chain
the
of command.
president of the Federation, or the Federation, and the admiral is in charge of uh oh my
The
god, I'm
military
blanking.
side of it or whatever.
Yes, but there's a term. So she's in charge of the United Federation of Planets,
He's in charge of
whereas
Starfleet.
he's in charge of Starfleet. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I guess I was a little bit confused as to the delegation of roles because I thought she answered to him technically, but I guess it's the other way around.
Right.
Just because I was a little bit confused about the roles.
You didn't understand the metaphor? She's the conductor.
Well, once he said that, I was like,
He says, I do percussion.
I know.
I was
once
like,
he-
I bet you do. I bet you do, you little dadmiral.
I don't necessarily think there was anything nefarious going on between them. I think it's just there's the politics of the grander scheme of how to thread the needle of what they're dealing with right now.
See,
Yeah, I found that to be one of the more interesting parts of that conversation, actually.
Mhm.
I'm going to take a step further, Grant, and say I think that she could be an incredible mentor for Burnham. Like, I think what she's constantly, like, she's going, I've got full trust in Burnham. She's talking her through what she's doing. Like, she's explaining the strategy. I think in previous iterations of Star Trek, presidents and admirals never really explained what they were doing until turned out that they were doing something sus. Right? It's always like, you don't need to know, just do what I tell you. And she's really like pulling Burnham aside and going, hey, I know, look, this is about diplomacy and we really need Navarre to be in here, but make no mistake about it, you're in charge. Like, she's having these conversations and then afterwards explaining, like, I know I wanted justice, but this is why she's spending a lot of time investing in Burnham, and it feels like a mentor situation.
I like the idea of all of these characters just having a little bit more of that positive take that we kind of hope humanity will eventually get to anyway, where people aren't constantly hiding motivations and acting in a lot of dubious self-interest, but we all do kind of move toward those ideals of what Starfleet, I guess, is supposed to be. So if this show is actually leaning more into that idea of, there's going to be openness of dialogue, you're going to be included in the conversation and respected for your opinion. It might not always go your way, but that isn't a reflection on us being wrong or you being wrong. It's just, there's a balance that has to happen with leadership roles and decisions that are made.
Yeah. Clyde, when you're saying, I think that the president is trying to mentor Burnham, I agree. I think that's what she is trying to do, but I don't think Burnham is looking for a mentor from her.
No.
Like, it's such a one-way street right now, and like, it's really hard to mentor someone who doesn't want it.
Yeah, but I think that's what happens a lot, right? Like, I think there's the I'm gonna go and seek out a mentor, but does that feel like Burnham to you? I'm gonna go find a mentor. No,
I mean, but Georgiou, I think, was that for her.
Yeah, but we didn't get to see how that started.
It's true,
right?
Well,
We didn't really get to see how that started.
Are we sure though, Clyde, that Burnham shouldn't be the mentor to the president, given she's 3,000 years older?
It's not about age. It's about wisdom.
She's got a lot of wisdom under her belt as well.
Yeah, but I think what I'm hoping that I'm seeing from the president is we're seeing this evolution, right? It's almost like cyclical, and the fact that the Federation was this, if you go back to TNG and Voyager and even Deep Space Nine, the Federation had resolved all these conflict and issues and was really about, I don't know, just this standard that we couldn't even really imagine today. And somehow, through Discovery, all of that has been unwound, right? And we've even got a chance to see some Mirrorverse where we've seen, well, what happens if it went way in the other direction? Now it feels like we might be getting back to that, and that this president is trying to show, because Burnham has said we've got to bring back the Federation. It's been important. This president, at least on the surface, is trying to show, hey, these are the decisions that we're going to have to make to bring the Federation back to that type of ideal. It feels like the president is playing chess, and Burnham, unfortunately, is playing checkers and doesn't know it.
Maybe
right?
it's more the president's playing Vulcan chess and Burnham's playing regular chess.
Maybe. And so I think, and what I'm hoping is that even if she doesn't want the mentorship, she's going to learn something, right? And it only takes one, maybe three I told you so before someone goes, maybe I should start paying attention.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys again. How long was the burn in? Do you guys remember how long the burn was?
Over 100 years.
It was over 100 years, right? Okay. So this president and Vance and everyone that's a part of Starfleet and the Federation have lived their whole lives within the construct of the burn and like some dark ages, essentially. This idea that like time reversed backwards and a lot of technology and travel and connections were lost. They are now desperately trying to play catch up, but they're trying to play catch up on ideas that they had to learn from about like 3-4 generations back prior to the burn. Whereas Burnham is coming from a place that does know how to have those relationships, does know how to operate in a realm, like with Saru, with her, like with Joe. All of these people operated as much more of experts who had an understanding of that, minus the 3,000 years of advancement, I suppose.
Yeah, I was like, well, there's 3,000 years of advancement, but also 3,000 years of complicated relationships, right? Like we don't know what wars have been waged, what cultural differences have changed between different alien races, that new aliens that have been added to the sort of database of species and stuff like that. So
Kern's got a good point too. Maybe lifespan's expanded. Maybe it was 2 generations.
And I mean, Vulcans live a very long time, so it's possible there are, definitely there are folks.
I think you also have to take in consideration that Burnham, Discovery was 10 years prior to Enterprise. So that Federation looked very different than, say, TNG Federation, right? Or Voyager Federation. Like there was some more evolutions and relationships with Romulans and Klingons, and the complexity in technology changed. So, I mean, Burnham's got a good start, but I wouldn't say it's the blueprint. She's got the blueprint for it.
People keep pointing out, like Mark points out, that the president is part Cardassian, which I guess we don't trust them.
Yes, that's
my
a fair
understanding.
point.
And Lise A says the president is using Burnham, and she isn't happy about it, but it's for the greater good. Do you think that she's being used, like manipulated?
I mean, she's definitely become a bit of a let's send in the A squad, to show good faith movement and the people who have saved us.
Look, this Discovery team has got a lot of popularity. They're rock stars, right? And is she cozying up to that celebrity for her own purpose? Sure,
a little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. I would agree with that. Is it for the greater good? Yeah, right. It is definitely political in nature.
Takako makes a fair point too. Says doesn't agree. She doesn't agree with me. Burnham and everyone came from a time when the Federation was a given. They're all learning how to get back to that. Which yeah, that's a good point. I mean, building something versus existing within that construct already, 2 wildly different things.
Very true. Very true. The one other thing I wanted to just like touch upon was that I will say watching a fight scene without Michelle Yeoh in it makes me a little sad. It's like the first bigger like hand-to-hand combat scene we've had since she left the show, and I feel like she was definitely missed.
Can we just take a moment and reflect on the fact that was an all-woman fight scene, and I thought it kind of was amazing, right? I just felt like, yeah, we're missing kind of Michelle Yeoh to come in, because Michelle Yeoh was always the baddest of the baddest,
Yeah.
right? So you're missing your big hitter, and you've replaced your big hitter with Tilly, who drops the sword,
Mhm.
right?
But tosses it back, gets
But
it
tosses
up.
it back. She found her role, she found her niche,
Mhm.
and she rocked it. I still thought it was amazing.
An excellent
But
squad.
I also like sword fighting, so that's a whole nother
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, it was a super fun scene to watch. It was just one of those times when I'm like, oof, if Michelle Yeoh was in here, the like,
I'm with you, Mariah. In fact,
I-
I did not like the opening sequences fight scene, like with a guy, because there were some weird cuts in the editing there. Like there's a point where she knocks him down to the ground, and in the next scene it shows him shoot and slide across into the wall, but like it didn't make sense for him to all of a sudden also propel way across the room. And then later, like he looks up and he sees a sword. And in the next scene, he's not only stood up, fully grabbed the sword and advanced on her, but now is advancing on her. And I was like, what's happening with these cuts? This action. I feel like the flow is always a little bit tighter with a show or with a scene with Michelle Yeoh.
yeah. I think that just comes. I mean, I'm sure the stunt coordinators are obviously fantastic on this show. They do some pretty incredible stuff, but I think it comes with just that like years of on-screen fight experience when you have someone with that. Like, I mean,
Your
she's Michelle.
cut's gonna be
She's
transition
Michelle
to that next
Yeoh.
scene. Right.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
So
It's pretty amazing.
she's so great. Anything else, y'all? Do we have anything else from the comments that we might have missed?
I agree with Choopy. I'd like to see Tilly become awesome with a sword.
That would be really fun.
I'm just excited to see where Tilly ends up at the end of the season. This whole journey of self-discovery, there's so much you can do with it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be cool. And the preview for next week looks cool. I won't spoil it. I will say if you want to go watch the Ready Room, the little teaser trailer they tossed up at the end there, we're getting some more Tilly and Adira action together, which I think they make great scene partners. So I'm excited for that.
Cool. Yeah, I got nothing else to add except, hey, if you are enjoying our show and you want to help support us, you can go to patreon.com/Star Trek Pod and make a $2 an episode pledge. That means if we put out an episode, you are offering up $2 for that episode, and in exchange, we'd love for you to come join us on our Star Trek Slack channel. We'll send you an invite if you join up over at patreon.com/Star Trek Pod, and you'll join a bunch of other lovely folks who just love talking about Trek.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you.
And you can find links to the Patreon and all the other places you can listen to or watch this podcast at StarTrekPod.co. And if you want to join us live, we go live on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Central. And you can subscribe to YouTube, hit that notification bell, and you'll get a little pop-up whenever we go live.
Yep. If you want to follow us, check us out at Star Trek Pod on all of our socials.
All right, y'all. I think that's it. Thanks for hanging. Thank you for chatting with us, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Live long.